Every meaningful change starts from within. Yet in a world conditioned to chase applause, we often confuse being seen with being aligned. We reach outward, scrolling through highlight reels, comparing timelines, waiting for the green light from others before we allow ourselves to evolve. But real transformation, deep, lasting transformation, does not respond to noise. It responds to truth. And truth isn't found in validation. It's found in alignment. Inner alignment is when your thoughts, emotions, actions, and intentions flow in the same direction. It's when your inner world starts to reflect the reality you want to live in. You're no longer acting from the wound, the past, or the expectation of others. You're acting from the vision of who you are becoming. This is powerful, not because anyone else notices, but because you do. You start to move differently, speak differently. You begin to radiate certainty that doesn't require confirmation. Outer validation, on the other hand, is a performance trap. It keeps you hooked on results, feedback, and recognition. You may be doing all the right things, but if it's for approval, the change won't last. It's externally anchored. And anything built externally can be taken away. Inner alignment creates stability that outlasts circumstances. You're not chasing, you're choosing. You're not trying to impress. You're trying to become. When you build yourself quietly, you start tuning into that inner compass. You stop asking if others approve and start asking if it feels right in your body, in your energy, in your knowing. This level of self-trust takes time. It requires honesty and courage. You may lose people along the way. You may lose habits, routines, and even identities that kept you safe but small. That's the cost of growth, trading the familiar for the authentic. Think about the moments when you've made real progress in life. Not the moments others clapped for you, but the ones where you finally said, "nah," to something that drained you. The nights you chose to stay in and journal instead of escape. The mornings you got up early, not because you had to, but because you wanted to meet yourself on a deeper level. These aren't headline moments, but they are the moments of becoming. And they come from alignment, not performance. When you align with your future self, when your thoughts reflect where you're going instead of where you've been, you shift your frequency. You literally begin to broadcast a different energy. You become a magnet for opportunities, people, and experiences that match your new identity. But more than that, you begin to feel peace. Peace because you're not fighting against your own values. You're not abandoning yourself to be liked. You're not seeking permission to grow. Inner alignment also requires discipline. It's easy to stay reactive, to live based on circumstance. But real growth is proactive. It asks you to show up as the version of yourself that hasn't fully materialized yet. That means thinking from that place, making decisions from that place, managing your emotions as if you're already there, not someday, today. Alignment isn't future-based. It's present, practiced. There's a kind of quiet power that emerges when someone is internally aligned. They're not loud. They're not defensive. They don't need to convince anyone of their worth. Their energy speaks before they do. That's because they're no longer fragmented. They're integrated. What they say, feel, and do flows from the same center. That's what makes them magnetic. That's what makes them unshakable. When you live for outer validation, you live on a roller coaster. Your worth rises and falls based on likes, opinions, and outcomes. But when you live from inner alignment, you build a foundation that can't be touched. You know who you are, even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. And that's when the real work happens. Beneath the surface, where no praise exists, only purpose, there is a version of you waiting to be lived. A version shaped not by memory, but by possibility. Not defined by wounds, but by wisdom. But to reach that version, to fully step into your future self, you must release the grip of the past. You can't carry old energy into a new reality and expect transformation to happen. The past is heavy, and you cannot build something elevated with weights tied to your ankles. The past, when left unresolved, becomes a script you unconsciously keep acting out. The conversations you replay, the regrets you hold on to, the shame you bury, the guilt you avoid, all of it becomes part of a silent operating system that dictates your reactions, beliefs, and self-worth. You may want to grow, you may say you're ready to change, but if the past still owns emotional real estate in your body, then every decision you make is filtered through what already happened, not what could be. Releasing the past doesn't mean erasing it. It means understanding it, learning from it, and then letting it go so it no longer defines who you are. You are not your mistakes. You are not what happened to you. You are not the identity you built in survival mode. And you are not obligated to continue living out the version of yourself that people remember. You have permission to evolve. But that evolution begins with letting go. Letting go is not always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's waking up and choosing not to respond the way you used to. It's noticing a trigger and deciding not to feed it. It's catching yourself in an old narrative and rewriting it in real time. It's understanding that healing isn't about never feeling pain again. It's about changing your relationship with it. Pain doesn't stop your future, but your attachment to it can. There's a reason why some people never move forward, even when everything looks ready. They've built their identity around their struggle. They've worn it like armor. And letting go of the past feels like losing a part of themselves. But growth always requires shedding. Think of a snake that cannot grow without shedding its skin. Think of a tree that lets go of dead leaves before a new season begins. Nature doesn't cling. It surrenders. So must we. Forgiveness is a key part of this process. Not just forgiving others, but forgiving yourself for not knowing better, for staying too long, for the times you abandoned your truth to be accepted. Self-forgiveness is one of the most liberating acts of release. It's how you say, that was me then, but this is me now. You stop punishing yourself for your past and begin choosing yourself in the present. Releasing the past also means reclaiming your power. Every time you replay an old wound, you give it energy. You let it sit in the driver's seat of your current experience. But when you stop feeding the story and start feeding your future, you regain control. You shift from victim to creator. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what can I create from this? The future you desire exists on a different frequency than the past you survived. You cannot hold both. You cannot vibrate with your vision while clinging to your history. It's either comfort or growth, familiarity or freedom. The doorway to your next chapter is only unlocked when you stop looking back long enough to move forward. The people who change their lives in the most extraordinary ways are not the ones with the perfect pasts. They're the ones who make peace with their imperfections. They understand that the story of their pain can either imprison them or empower them, depending on how they choose to carry it. Healing isn't linear. Sometimes it's messy, but it always starts with the willingness to loosen your grip on what no longer serves who you are becoming. The voice in your head is the most constant one you'll ever hear. It narrates your days, colors your perception, and becomes the lens through which you see yourself in the world. It's not always loud. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides beneath sarcasm or silence. But it's always there, shaping your identity in real time. What you say to yourself, even when no one is listening, is building who you are becoming. That's why mastering your inner dialogue isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. Most people speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to someone they love. Harsh, dismissive, critical. They beat themselves up for not being enough, for not doing it right, for not getting there fast enough. This internal bullying becomes so familiar that it starts to sound like truth. But it's not truth, it's programming. Old conditioning, past experiences, other people's opinions, internalized shame. And the longer it goes unchallenged, the more it becomes identity. The words you repeat to yourself become beliefs, and beliefs become behaviors. If you constantly tell yourself you're lazy, you start to act in ways that prove it. If you call yourself stupid, you subconsciously look for evidence to support that label. You lower your standards, you settle, you shrink, not because it's true, but because you've accepted it as fact. That's the power of inner dialogue. It quietly builds the framework for your self-image. But the beautiful truth is, just as your inner voice can limit you, it can also liberate you. You can rewire the script. You can choose to speak differently, even if it feels awkward at first. Affirmations aren't fluff, they're repetition. Repeated thoughts form neural pathways. Just like a muscle, the mind responds to what you practice. Speak belief. Speak strength. Speak clarity. Not just when you feel good, but especially when you don't. Especially when the old voice tries to take over. Mastering your inner dialogue doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect. It means acknowledging where you are without identifying with it. It's saying, I'm feeling afraid right now, instead of, I'm a fearful person. It's noticing the doubt without becoming it. You begin to separate who you truly are from the noise of old programming. That separation is where awareness lives. And awareness is the first step toward transformation. Your inner voice should be your guide, not your enemy. It should uplift you, coach you, ground you. It should speak from possibility, not past pain. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens by intention. You train it like a skill. You pause and ask, is what I'm saying to myself right now helping me grow or holding me back? You interrupt old narratives and replace them with ones that align with your future self. The most successful, grounded, and resilient people have mastered this, not because they've never struggled with negative self-talk, but because they've learned to lead themselves out of it. They don't let the first thought be the final word. They don't believe everything the mind offers. They question. They redirect. They speak to themselves like someone worth loving, someone worth fighting for. Your self-image is not built by external validation. It's built internally, one thought at a time. And the thoughts you feed yourself determine how you show up in the world. Speak as the person you are becoming. Speak as the person who is healing. Speak as the person who is already enough, already worthy, already whole. Because when you do, your energy shifts, your posture changes. You walk into rooms differently. You start to attract different experiences, not because you're faking confidence, but because you've redefined how you see yourself. Rewiring your inner dialogue is a quiet revolution. It's invisible to others, but deeply felt within. It's the daily discipline of speaking truth over fear, vision over limitation. And in time, the voice in your head becomes your greatest ally, not your loudest critic. The stories change, the tone changes, and slowly, your entire life follows suit. Stillness, often misunderstood in a world obsessed with motion. We're conditioned to equate movement with progress, noise with relevance, and hustle with purpose. But there is a quiet strength in the decision to slow down, to be still, not because you're stuck, but because you're aligning. Stillness isn't about doing nothing. It's about creating the space where everything begins to make sense. It's the moment between breaths, between thoughts, where clarity is born. People fear stillness because it confronts them with themselves. In silence, distractions fade. The noise recedes. And what remains is truth, unfiltered, uncomfortable, undeniable. That's why many avoid it. They keep moving, keep scrolling, keep chasing, hoping the next thing will fill the void they're not ready to face. But running louder doesn't quiet the chaos. You don't outrun yourself. You only delay the meeting. Stillness demands presence. It asks for your attention, and in return, it offers insight that motion can't give. Stillness is not passive. It's an active recalibration. It's where you gather your energy, recenter your focus, and remember who you are without the roles, the expectations, the noise. In stillness, you can observe without reacting. You can feel without fleeing. You can listen without needing to respond. And that is where your power begins to multiply. You begin to respond from depth, not default. You begin to lead your life instead of being pulled by it. There's a reason the most grounded people often speak the least. They've learned to draw strength from stillness. They don't need to prove their presence. Their energy says enough. They've trained themselves to sit with discomfort, to process before reacting, to breathe before speaking. This isn't weakness, it's wisdom. In a world quick to react, stillness is rebellion. In a culture obsessed with speed, choosing stillness is choosing intention over impulse. Stillness also creates space for alignment. You can't hear your intuition when your mind is overloaded. You can't see clearly when you're constantly rushing. When you pause, you realign with your purpose. You remember what actually matters. The to-do lists fade. The comparisons dissolve. What's left is essence, pure and unshaken. It's in that space that you begin to access something deeper than motivation. You touch vision. You tap into inner knowing. Creativity is born in stillness. Vision is refined in stillness. Strategy emerges from stillness. When you're always moving, always chasing, you don't have time to ask, is this even where I want to go? Many burn out not from working too hard, but from running too far in the wrong direction. Stillness interrupts that autopilot. It allows for course correction. It puts you back in the driver's seat. There is also healing in stillness. The nervous system softens. The body speaks. Emotions surface, not to harm you, but to be acknowledged and released. It's easy to numb through activity, to bury pain under productivity. But unprocessed pain doesn't disappear. It waits. It settles in your body and shapes your choices. Stillness gives you the time to feel, to process, to release. Healing isn't rushed. It requires presence. And presence begins in stillness. Stillness is also where resilience is built. You learn to sit in uncertainty without panic. You develop the capacity to hold duality, to be in pain and still have hope, to feel fear and still move forward. It's where you stop reacting to life and start engaging with it intentionally. Strength isn't forged in constant action. It's forged in the moments where you meet yourself fully without judgment and choose to stay. The world won't teach you to value stillness. It will tell you to keep going, keep producing, keep proving. But stillness doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. Its power is quiet, but transformative. It's the reset your mind needs, the restoration your body craves, and the clarity your soul waits for. When you embrace stillness, not as an escape, but as a strategy, you start to build from a place of alignment, not exhaustion. And that shift changes everything from the inside out long before you open your mouth, before you explain who you are, before you list your credentials or share your story. Your energy has already spoken. It moves ahead of you like a silent ambassador. It communicates your state of being, your beliefs, your self-regard. And people feel it, even if they can't explain it. It's the vibe in a room that changes when you walk in. It's the unspoken language of presence. That's why mastering your energy is more powerful than perfecting your words. Energy is not just mood. It's not just how you feel in the moment. It's the accumulation of your thoughts, your focus, your emotions, your habits, your environment, and most importantly, your self-awareness. It's the frequency you live on. If you constantly think thoughts of lack, fear, comparison, or doubt, you emit that frequency. And no matter what you say, people will feel what's real beneath the surface. You can't fake alignment. You can't pretend peace. Energy doesn't lie. Some people walk into a room and immediately command attention, not because they're loud or flashy, but because they are congruent. Their energy is steady, clear, and grounded. They know who they are. They're not trying to be liked. They're not performing. They're just being. That kind of presence is magnetic. It's rare because it requires doing the inner work. It requires knowing yourself deeply enough that you don't need external cues to feel valid. The opposite is true, too. You've met people who seem successful on paper, say all the right things, smile at the right times, but something feels off. Their words and their energy don't match. That misalignment creates tension, and most people pick up on it, even if they can't explain why. Authentic energy isn't just about being positive, it's about being real. Being integrated, being honest about where you are, while being intentional about where you're going. Shifting your energy starts with awareness. What are you thinking when no one is watching? What emotional state do you live in most often? What stories are you repeating internally that either expand you or restrict you? Your dominant energy becomes your identity. If you wake up every day expecting resistance, you carry that defensiveness into your interactions. If you wake up with gratitude and purpose, you infuse your actions with presence and clarity. Energy is also what you carry into your relationships, your work, your decisions. You can't build something meaningful from a state of fear. You can't connect deeply if you're guarded. You can't inspire others if you're drained yourself. That's why energy is your responsibility. No one else can manage it for you. It's not about being perfect. It's about being intentional. Choosing how you want to show up moment by moment and adjusting when you fall off track. Raising your energy isn't about hype. It's about alignment. When you align your actions with your values, your words with your truth, and your thoughts with your vision, you begin to radiate something different. People may not know what it is, but they'll feel safer around you, more open, more inspired. That's because your energy gives them permission to access that same groundedness within themselves. You become a mirror of what's possible. And just like you feel other people's energy, they feel yours. Whether it's on a stage, in a meeting, through a message, or in silence, your presence communicates volumes. You can't hide energy. You can only elevate it. And when you start paying attention to how you carry yourself, not just physically, but energetically, you realize how much influence you truly have, not through control, but through coherence. It's not about trying harder. It's about being truer, truer to who you are becoming, truer to what you believe, truer to how you want to feel, because that truth becomes a current, and that current reaches others before you ever speak. That's why the most powerful thing you can offer the world isn't a performance. It's your presence, the energy that flows when you are fully rooted in who you are, fully aware of your impact, and fully committed to carrying a frequency that reflects your evolution growth. Doesn't always make noise. It doesn't always announce itself with grand gestures or public declarations. Sometimes the deepest transformation happens quietly, between thoughts, beneath the surface, beyond what the world can immediately see. You build yourself not in the spotlight, but in the shadows of your own discipline. You evolve not through perfection, but through presence. By releasing the weight of the past, mastering your inner voice, sitting in stillness, aligning your energy, and choosing to rise in ways no one else may ever fully understand, you begin to create something unshakable, a version of you that's rooted, intentional, and untouchable, not because you shouted your worth, because you lived it quietly, powerfully, unapologetic.